Hello, folks. We are here at the National Security Summit this morning with Dinesh Souza, author of the book and producer of the movie America. For those who haven't seen it, it will be shown here this morning. And Dinesh, in that you talk about the problems America has right now, taking at least valuing our culture. And I think one of the things we're going to talk about at the summit here is one of the big challenges to America is militant Islam. Not just around the world, but also here in America. Do you see us as able to confront that challenge as a culture?
I think the difficulty we're having in confronting Islam isn't just multiculturalism, which is the idea of sort of valuing all cultures and particularly minority cultures. Multiculturalism is kind of a pathology within liberalism. But the broader problem is that the progressives, the left, in this country has been telling a story about America now for 25 years. And this story makes us the bad guy. It's a story that began in Vietnam. Many people turned against the war. You can debate the Vietnam War, but what I object to is that they went back through American history, all the way back to Columbus, and they reinterpreted the American story as a series of crimes visited upon foreign groups, but also domestic groups, the Native Americans, the African Americans. So if you begin by believing that you have a bad country, it's morally immobilized in taking on an enemy. In fact, you're likely to see the enemy in some sense as a freedom fighter, fighting to liberate itself from you. Obama's worldview isn't very far from that.
So given that we have confronted militant Islam in a couple of wars, not overly successfully though, other than militarily, do you think we have the backbone to go ahead and call it a danger to the free liberal culture that we enjoy in America?
Militant Islam is in some ways similar to earlier threats America has faced, Nazism, communism, in that it is an ideology. It's driven by an ideology, and in some ways it's a more threatening, more dangerous ideology because Nazism had no appeal outside of Germany. Right. Similarly, Soviet communism, it wasn't like we were worried that it was going to make converts. It relied on power, but ideologically it was not that difficult to defeat. Islam, on the other hand, is one of the world's great religions. And so appealing to Islam is making an appeal to well over 1 billion people. Right. So it's a very powerful ideology, and it can't be fought just by declaring a war on terror. You have to declare a war on radical Islam. And you have to identify it, and you have to be able to drive a wedge between radical and traditional Islam. So we have, it's a new war. I'm not surprised we've made some mistakes along the way. My biggest fear is we have a leadership today that in some senses doesn't just not comprehend, but is not interested in fighting that war in the way it needs to be fought.
So they subscribe to what you said is the blame America first, to go ahead and cast us as oppressors as opposed to liberators in most cases. You mentioned Nazism, communism. We won those wars. And we won them because we stood up for what America is. So do you think we can go ahead and create some sort of groundswell that says America's okay? You know, it is a good thing, and then retake that high ground?
Well, we can create that groundswell among the American people. But what's different in our politics is that in the Cold War, for example, even though the Republicans and the Democrats disagreed, they basically had similar goals. Right. You take Reagan and Tip O'Neill, they agreed America should be a prosperous country. You want a goose that lays the golden eggs, even if you want to argue about how you distribute it. I think Tip O'Neill would agree that America's a force for good in the world. He might have said we got it wrong here or we got it wrong there, but on the balance, the idea that the world would be better off without America, right. The Democrats didn't believe that either. So what's changed is that we now have a party, we now have a movement that I think does subscribe to the idea that it would be better if American superiority were to be diminished and if power were more equitably redistributed.
And wealth.
Wealth and power. So Obama isn't just an economic redistributor at home, he's a global power redistributor, in my view.
So, I mean, when he talks about America is he says we're still the essential nation, but you're saying that he may not believe in the way that was always, American exceptionalism is always misinterpreted. You know, it's the idea that we built a country on ideals and freedom and liberty. It's not that we're that much better than anyone else. It's just that we started from a place where all are created equal, et cetera, et cetera. Can we, and then at least reinvigorate that ideal towards the goals you said?
Yes, the American ideal was always intended to be a universal ideal. Not all Americans are created equal, but all men. And it's a revolutionary idea. It's a global idea in that sense. American exceptionalism is linked to American universalism. Mm-hmm. And I think the ordinary American believes that. And there's a patriotism that beats in the heart of every American. The left has sort of beaten that down. Right. And so I think what's needed is a intelligent and powerful and emotional articulation of it. Mm-hmm. My film is one effort to do that.
Brilliant. Folks, we appreciate it. It's been Dinesh D'Souza. We're about to go watch his movie, America. If you haven't seen it, I strongly advise you to do so. Thank you, sir.
Pleasure.